The Trump administration today cracking down on sanctuary cities. Attorney General Sessions announcing that sanctuary cities will lose billions of dollars in federal grants if they do not enforce immigration laws and cooperate with federal authorities.
When cities and states refuse to help enforce immigration laws, our nation is less safe.
Conservative commentator, best-selling author Michelle Malkin joins us. Also tonight, President Trump announces the formation of a new Office of American Innovation. It will be headed by his son-in-law and senior advisor, Jared Kushner. The goal, get rid of government bloat and bureaucracy. Drain that swamp. The Dean of Republican Strategist, Ed Rollins, and Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Post, Michael Goodwin, join me. And some in the White House might want to reassess their thinking. White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus actually floating the prospect of working with Democrats instead of writing a stronger, better health care bill.
This president is not going to be a partisan president. He wants to make sure that people don't get left behind. He wants to make sure that there's competition in the marketplace. If those three things are incompatible with some members of the Republican House, then we need to work with moderate Democrats.
Yes, the same Dems who have obstructed President Trump every day, every step of the way since he was inaugurated. Good evening, everybody. Our top story tonight, Attorney General Jeff Sessions announcing a major crackdown on sanctuary cities, saying the Trump administration will withhold billions of dollars of federal funds from cities that don't comply with federal immigration laws. According to the Center for Immigration Studies, there are more than 300 sanctuary cities and counties in this country. The announcement comes as activists in New York City are holding the first ever national conference in support of sanctuary cities. Fox News correspondent Rick Leventhal with our report.
I strongly urge our nation's states and cities and counties to consider carefully the harm they are doing.
At the same time, Attorney General Jeff Sessions spoke about the danger of sanctuary cities. The first ever national conference in support of sanctuary cities was underway in New York City.
January 20th was a tragic, tragic day for our nation.
Organizers say they want to protect all immigrants, especially the undocumented, by crafting municipal policy to confront mass deportation and criminalization.
We are going to become this administration's worst nightmare.
The White House says there is ample evidence to support a crackdown, including allegations of rape of a high school girl in Rockville, Maryland, allegedly by two undocumented immigrants, and another illegal in New York accused of sexually assaulting a toddler.
DUIs, assaults, burglaries, drug crimes, gang rapes, crimes against children, and murderers. Countless Americans would be alive today, and countless loved ones would not be grieving today if these policies of sanctuary cities were ended.
He could not be more wrong. He could not be more inaccurate and unable to actually see the realities that play in our cities and our states.
Krikorian with the Center for Immigration Studies says otherwise.
Ironically, sanctuary cities are taking the immigration law into their own hands in a way that is actually both illegal and counterproductive to broader public safety goals.
For cities that don't come around to the Trump administration's position, the cost could be high.
We continue a dialogue and a discussion, and as we continue to ensure that monies that go for law enforcement only go to cities who are participating in an effective, collegial, cooperative way.
Organizers of this conference supporting sanctuary cities say it would be illegal for the White House to withhold funds from places that don't comply with the law. But the administration says it can and it will, setting up the possibility of more court battles over Trump policy. Lou?
Rick, thank you very much. Rick Leventhal reporting. Joining me now to talk about the long-awaited crackdown against sanctuary cities, or as some call them, outlaw cities, and of course Attorney General Sessions and a Trump administration committed to the enforcement of our laws. Joining us, Michelle Malkin, host of Michelle Malkin Investigates on CRTV.com. Great to have you with us, Michelle. This is an extraordinary moment for many of us who've covered this issue, as you and I have for some time. It's fantastical to think that there is an administration and an attorney general actually going to enforce the laws of immigration in this country and insist upon cooperation and compliance by the cities to American law.
Lou, it is a great day for America, for law-abiding citizens, for law-abiding immigrants and naturalized citizens as well, who understand that this is the primary duty of the federal government to defend and protect the Constitution, our rule of law, law and order, public safety, and our sovereignty. And I am in Denver, and I think it's significant that Attorney General Jeff Sessions mentioned specifically a horrific case here where the police ignored an ICE detainer and allowed an illegal alien from Mexico to be released, who then went on to murder a young man at a Denver train station, light rail station here in Denver. And yet you have these open borders zealots and ideologues meeting in New York, as you mentioned, Lou, who are denying the bloody reality of these sanctuary jurisdictions. I hope and pray, Lou, that this is only the start, because this order, of course, deals with cities, municipalities, and states. But there are so many other government entities that are also defying law and are also violating Section 1373, which Attorney General Sessions has cited. For example, here in Denver, the Denver Public Schools have explicitly declared themselves a sanctuary or an outlaw jurisdiction, as I call them, in the public schools. That kind of defiance needs to be punished in the very same way in the pocketbook.
Yeah, and that defiance extends across 300 jurisdictions, as we said here tonight. 25 states have, to their credit, moved to stop any, prohibit any sanctuary policies on the part of any jurisdiction within those states. But it's also a time where the administration needs to go beyond this and say, we're going to absolutely insist on schools, any other jurisdiction, but particularly schools, complying with law. And we need to hear more information from our federal government. You can't find out readily how many illegal immigrants are in our schools, the cost that is there. It's estimated, but of course there's no record of it because it is politically incorrect. And then you have all sorts of organizations, nonprofits, that are being funded by the federal government to be activists supporting illegal immigration. And that's got to stop too.
Exactly right, Lou. This is a very trenchant point that you're making. I hope it goes all the way to the top of the White House in terms of the need for absolute transparency and the game playing that goes on, because a lot of these government entities, a lot of these nonprofits will play games and say, well, we haven't formally or explicitly declared ourselves sanctuary jurisdictions, outlaw jurisdictions, and yet de jure and de facto, this is in fact what they are doing. I think every one of these nonprofits, and in particular churches that benefit from IRS nonprofit status, that are acting openly as sanctuaries for illegal aliens, throwing open their doors, advertising it, need to be punished as well. Yeah.
I want to turn to this extraordinary moment where conservatives were being condemned by some members of the Trump administration for not going along with a bad bill, only 17% of the country supporting it, a bill that across the board conservative organizations said was not worth a tinker's damn, and yet the response of Reince Priebus and others was, well, we're going to be working with the same Democrats who have been frustrating this administration at every turn, instead of trying to create a terrific piece of legislation. I mean, this is an upside-down moment for some of the president's advisors.
I'll say it's Alice in Wonderland plus Kafka plus Orwell all rolled into one. And it's one of the reasons I hate the Beltway swamp so much, Lou. Matt Drudge had a very trenchant comment himself on Twitter the other day. He said, the swamp drains you. And I can't but think that President Trump is feeling pretty drained right now. You know, he was elected and with a mandate to change business as usual. And any way you slice it, this Ryancare, this Ryancare, swamp care was Beltway business as usual, textbook to the T.
Michelle, as always, great to see you. Thanks for being with us. Michelle Malkin.
You too. Thanks.
Take care. We're coming right back. Much more straight ahead. Stay with us. Well, hang on. We're going down the rabbit hole with Iran. Iran imposing sanctions on 15 U.S. companies. The Iranian retaliatory move comes days after the United States sanctioned 30 foreign companies or individuals for helping Iran's ballistic missile program. Among the companies hit with the, well, mostly symbolic Iranian sanctions are missile maker Raytheon, United Technologies, and truck maker Oshkosh, by gosh. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today thanking the Trump administration for its staunch support of Israel. Well, joining me now to talk about Israel, Iran's provocations, the Trump administration's policies toward North Korea, Ambassador John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the UN, Fox News contributor. And John, good to have you with us.
Glad to be with you.
Let's begin with, it's been a long time since we've had an administration lauded so sincerely by the Prime Minister as this. Your thoughts?
Well, I think it's quite significant that Prime Minister Netanyahu has laid out the kind of support that the Trump administration has given Israel, because if you tried to follow this in the mainstream media, you wouldn't see any trace of it at all. But it's extremely significant given the risks of terrorism in the Middle East, given the continuing Iranian nuclear weapons program, that after 8 years of the worst relationship at the governmental level between Israel and the United States since the modern state of Israel was created in 1948, we're back on track. And I think that's an important signal, not just in the Middle East, but really around the world.
Along with that, the North Korean provocations continue. We're expecting another nuclear test within days. This administration, it has limited options, all options on the table, but at the same time, none of them appear to be particularly attractive.
No, look, they have to play the hand that was dealt them by the Obama administration, but the Trump White House and the State Department have unequivocally rejected the Obama policy, so-called strategic patience, which is a polite way of saying doing nothing. They've said correctly that further negotiations with North Korea are not going to get anywhere. I think it's time to draw the obvious connections between the North Korean and Iranian nuclear and ballistic missile programs. These two rogue states have been cooperating on missiles for 25 years or more, and probably on the nuclear programs.
And the American people have been fed a barrel load of bull by Democratic and Republican administrations all the while, whether it be the Iranian linkage or whether it be the Chinese, if you will, puppeteers.
Yeah, look, this connection is real, and let's face it, forget the Obama nuclear deal with Iran. When North Korea gets a deliverable nuclear weapons capability, Iran will have it the next day via a wire transfer. That's why I find it hard to believe. I'm glad Iran has now started sanctioning American firms, because now at least those firms won't have any desire to do business in Iran. I don't see how any patriotic American business can even contemplate doing a deal with that country when it's still on the list, quite rightly, of state sponsors of terrorism, when it's been the central banker for terrorism.
Well, after all, a president just created a deal, carried out a deal with Iran. He had sufficient temerity to do so, and Congress sufficient timidity to let him do so. So those companies, I don't think, should be held particularly up for scorn of a greater, dimension than that we should heap upon a president and a Congress that stood by.
Yeah, well, you could say these companies are following the Obama lead, and that's not a compliment, that's for sure.
Yeah, no way. Let's turn to Nunes, Devin Nunes, the chair of the House Intelligence Committee. Now Adam Schiff, the ranking member, is saying he should step down. Chuck Schumer, Senator Schumer, calling for him to step aside because it's Chuck Schumer. What should be his posture now?
Well, I think Nunes should be completely firm here. I don't see that he's done anything wrong. I think this outrage by Schiff, whom the Wall Street Journal has called the Joe McCarthy of this whole Russia investigation, really is demonstrating he's got something. I think they're attacking Nunes because they're worried about what this source told him. And let's be clear here. I think Nunes has got one or more people inside the intelligence community who are telling him things that the top levels of the intelligence community are not telling Congress or the White House. They're leaking it. So
hopefully this week we start to see the concrete evidence of all that it intimates. Right now, I guess you could say there's more evidence that Schiff is a McCarthyite than there is evidence that there has been a role for Russia with the Trump administration and/or associates. Bad for him. John Bolton, great to have you with us.
Thank you, Lou.
Ambassador John Bolton. Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. Should the Trump administration put any trust whatsoever in moderate Dems on health care or any other issue for that matter? We'd like to hear from you. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. And follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook and Instagram at Lou Dobbs. Tonight on Wall Street, stocks closing mostly lower. The Dow ended the day down 46 points after falling nearly 200 points earlier in the session. The S&P lost 2, the Nasdaq up 12. The market somewhat depressed as a result of the failure of Ryancare to move to a successful vote last Friday. Volume on the big board today, 3.2 billion shares. The Dow posting its longest losing streak now since 2011, down for 8 straight sessions. Despite these recent losses, stocks still posting strong gains since Election Day. The Dow and Nasdaq still up more than 12%. The S&P up a paltry 9% over that period. Crude oil resuming its slide down below $48 a barrel. And a reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast on the Salem Radio Network. And up next, Congressman Ted Poe tells the Freedom Caucus adios.
But no matter what changes were made, the goalposts kept getting moved. The Freedom Caucus decided that no was going to be the answer, and I think at some time we're going to have to say, yes, we are in power, we need to lead.
Well, who's to blame for this mess? That's the subject of my commentary tonight. And a little later, Ed Rollins, Michael Goodwin will assess it all, taking the long view, the strong arc of history. Well, day by day. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Well, a few thoughts now on President Trump's efforts to drain the swamp as Republicans try to place and avoid blame for the Ryancare debacle. OMB director and former Freedom Caucus member Mick Mulvaney, who has, an enviable perspective, acknowledged that the swamp critters won Friday when Speaker Ryan pulled the health care bill. The very same bill that for weeks Ryan had breezily and brazenly, it turned out, assured everyone it would pass.
I think if there's anything that's disappointing and sort of an educational process to the Trump administration was that this place was a lot more rotten than we thought that it was. And I thought it was, because I've been here for 6 years.
White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, for his part, defending his longtime friend, Speaker Paul Ryan, saying the president was 100% correct in blaming conservatives for Ryancare's failure. Really? Even though the bill had only 17% support in the final polling. 17%. Priebus actually had the chutzpah to say that the conference should have voted for the unpopular and potentially devastating legislation.
We can't be chasing the perfect all the time. I mean, sometimes you have to take the good and put it in your pocket and take the win. I think it's time for our folks to come together. And I also think it's time to potentially get a few moderate Democrats on board as well.
Now, there's a brilliant idea. So after trying to pass a bad bill in Ryancare that Priebus actually called a good bill, Priebus now wants to reach out to the Dems, who've obstructed every damn thing that President Trump has tried to do since he took the oath of office, rather than write an outstanding, strong bill based on the president's promises and values. I called on Ryan to resign nearly 2 weeks ago, as the audio of his disparaging and insulting remarks about President Trump were released, as Ryan declared before the election he would never defend or support Donald Trump. And still, some of his friends in the White House defend him. his politics, his rhino politics, and his constant incompetence. And while I greatly admire President Trump's loyalty, I desperately wish it were reciprocated by those who should be faithfully and exclusively serving President Trump rather than old friends, allies, and previous presidents. Let's hope, and God bless. The quotation of the evening, this one from Ernest Hemingway. The best way, he said, to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. We have found out a great deal, haven't we? We're coming right back. FBI Director James Comey, NSA Chief Admiral Mike Rogers won't be appearing at a closed House Intelligence Committee hearing tomorrow. That development comes as Chairman Devin Nunes revealed he viewed documents showing surveillance of Trump transition team members on the White House grounds last Tuesday. That was one day before he briefed the president about what he had learned. Nunes says his source was an intelligence official, not a White House staffer, and the documents were on the executive branch computer system. Well, to help us understand what's going on here and in lots of other places, the latest intelligence findings, senior fellow with the London Center for Policy Research, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Tony, great to have you here.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Devin Nunes tells the president what he learned in this moment on White House grounds.
Right.
Identifies an intelligence official. And Adam Schiff, the ranking member, calls for a recusal to step aside from the investigation.
Right.
Schumer, of course, jumping right in. Your thoughts?
Well, look, it's a MacGuffin. What they're trying to do, Lou, is get us off the topic of the fact that we're talking about information that came from a FISA warrant of some sort that resulted in what is either legal or illegal. We don't quite know because we don't know the justification. Right. Collection against the president and his team. So, and by the way, nothing to do with Russia. Nothing. This is not a Russia issue. So this whole thing that
and the chairman, Devin Nunes, has made that clear.
Made it very clear. But the Democrats continue to blur it. It's like a game. So right now, Lou, we know based on the context, my sources, they basically right now are trying to do two things very carefully. First, we don't want to give any information up regarding tools, techniques, or technology of how we collect. That's top secret. Right. Secondly, the reason that he had to go to the White House is because a lot of the information, the first time we met was over Able Danger when I had to testify. Lou, Congress never received the information.
Tony Shaffer's going back a few years
I'm geezing now. But my point is that when Congress demanded the information, they didn't give it up initially.
Right.
They had to go ask. I had to tell them where to go look. That's what I think happened here. Someone came in and said, look in this database, you're going to find what you need. So this whole like kabuki dance about, oh, he went to visit the White House. I don't think there's anything wrong with that by the fact that information is compartmented. He had to go look at the compartmented information.
You talked about FISA. So
right.
there may well indeed have been legal collection or
maybe
metadata.
We think so. Maybe.
Brought up. What's clear is that a lot of names were freed up to be leaked,
unmasked,
to be seen and to be known by a broad number of agencies here. And as a result, specifically of actions taken by the Obama administration in the final days in which they freed up raw intelligence for dispersal.
Correct. That's the issue. Even, Lou, if they can posit in a very clear way that it was done, quote unquote, legally under a FISA, that does not change the fact that the unmasking, the revealing of U.S. citizen information, person identities, was not legal. There was no instance that there was actually a foreign intelligence issue. Yeah. So that's the first violation. Second violation is, as you point out, the dissemination. You're talking about felony level violations of the law here under Title 18.
Classified information being leaked.
To the New York Times.
And by the way, I love the diversion that's created here. In some parts by the national left-wing media and some by the Dems. In which they want to get into these sort of mocking superior tones about, well, the president referred to wiretapping. He used wiretapping in quotes,
right.
First of all. Secondly, whatever the hell he said, that is actually right now, it appears to be substantiated by whatever Devin Nunes has seen. We'll see it ourselves, we hope, in the next day or two.
Well, I think he's trying to figure out a way, again, to parse out what he can to show the evidence of it. With that said, you're completely correct. I mean, I think President Trump has been vindicated by the fact that there is evidence of the wrongdoing. And like you said, somehow it's not, and there's no dispute, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and MSNBC and NBC all got the information. So, and nobody's disputing that. Lou, they had a headline on the New York Times, for goodness sake, about wiretapping. So it's
which
beyond,
they changed.
Which they changed. Talk about Orwellian, yes.
Yeah, I mean that. Those are the 5 organizations that President Trump calls fake news. So they're this sort of the gang of the fake 5, whatever you want to call them. We're looking at a lot of things going on here, and it appears to me that the president could really, he needs somebody, it seems to me, whether it be the Solicitor General, the Attorney General, whatever, to start preparing some papers, because this is an investigation waiting to happen.
Right.
And the Obama administration, whatever you say, if what is intimated at this point turns out to be the case, this is going to be an investigation that's going to rival certainly the Clinton investigation that should be resurrected, in my judgment.
I agree.
Yours.
Couldn't agree. No, look, there's a lot of, if you talk about foreign money, you talk about foreign involvement, you can't look past Miss Clinton and her campaign. You got to look at both. And to your point regarding the investigation, I actually told one of the White House officials who was picked by Mr. Trump in a meeting in Trump Tower, I said, you've got to go in. The moment you get in there on Inauguration Day, you have to treat the entire Obama administration like a crime scene. They've done things, and I'm not joking, Lou. I said that.
I know you're not.
And it's like,
but nonetheless, it does evoke a certain, it does evoke
a certain reality.
Some mirth.
A certain reality, yes.
Colonel, great to see you.
Great seeing you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. President Trump creating a new White House Innovation Office led by his son-in-law, senior advisor Jared Kushner. Kushner tasked with replicating private sector efficiency in the government. Mr. Trump also today rolled back Obama-era regulations, signing 4 bills eliminating rules on federal contracts, land use, education, he says, kill jobs. Joining me now to discuss the president's efforts to drain the swamp and get his agenda rolling, a member of the House Energy and Commerce Committee, first member of Congress to back the Trump presidential candidacy, Congressman Chris Collins of New York. Congressman, great to see you.
Good to be with you, Lou.
I got to start with, the president made a remark, and we heard Reince Priebus make a remark about the Freedom Caucus. This is a bill that was supported by 17% of the folks. It was a bill that did not repeal Obamacare. It was a bill that was awful hard to take, and 20 million Americans, according to the CBO, weren't going to be covered. What in the world is going on there in the Speaker's office?
Well, let me start, Lou, by saying clearly America did not understand what we were doing, and it was changing by the day. But here's what I have focused on, which you don't hear people talk about.
Whoa, Congressman, I got to be honest with you. I tremendously respect you. But when a congressman tells me the American people aren't smart enough to understand what the hell Congress is doing, let me just say that.
I didn't say not smart enough.
That means Congress wasn't smart enough to communicate. And that's where we are. I mean, that's not on the people. That's on Congress.
Well, here's what I will say. I was focused on $800 million or $1 billion worth of taxes, fees, and penalties being eliminated. We didn't talk about that enough. That would have been the first jump start to our economy, and somehow that message wasn't delivered about the huge amount of taxes, fees, and penalties.
It may not have been delivered because you didn't have open hearings. You had overnight meetings with the Energy and Commerce Committee. Ways and Means didn't have amendments. This is supposed to be regular order, and in 2 weeks you're supposed to be moving legislation this important, 1/7 of the economy. And I mean, Congress, I got to be honest with you. What in the hell were you people thinking?
Well, in hindsight, we can always look back and say there may have been.
Why the hell I said it at the time?
Well, you're smarter than some of us then, Lou.
Well,
all I can
don't you be giving me that faint praise now.
You know, I was joking with someone today, and this is not a joking matter, but with that said, we are going to look forward to moving on to tax reform. And I told somebody, you wouldn't have even had Frank Underwood get this through. It was that much of a compromise between, the Tuesday group, the Freedom Caucus, and at the end...
Well, hell, those aren't unknown constituencies and factions within Congress. Why wouldn't anyone with half a brain be reaching out to them, involving them in the creation of. By the way, who the hell wrote the legislation? Was it just one insurance company or was it more?
It wasn't the insurance companies, Lou, but I will say a lot of us, including the president, took the Freedom Caucus at face value, listened to them, put some changes in, and then they walked away from it. So if there was a lesson learned, it's, I guess, we're going to have to get a more solid commitment from the Freedom Caucus in dealing with them. But that's, again, water over the
Freedom Caucus is the problem. I get it. Not the fact that the speaker didn't know what the hell he was doing, promised for weeks that he had the votes. And on top of that, you're coming back with tax reform when you're going to be led by the same speaker. Are you kidding me? You're kidding me, right?
We are going to move to tax reform. We're going to have to do a better job on this. It's not as emotional as what we did on health care. We have a separate set of issues on tax reform to make it budget neutral so it doesn't sunset in 10 years.
Are you going to have it regular order? You're going to see amendments. We're going to see debate. We're going to be able to watch it transparently. Are we going to see that?
Yeah, we are, Lou, because we're looking at
a start.
At a July, August, September kind of time frame. We're going to have plenty of hearings. While we do have a starting point, there was some lessons learned here, and I think you're going to see more regular order on tax reform. We're not under the gun time-wise like we were on the health care. It's unfortunate
I don't know where that gun came from, because I could never understand the urgency that would make the clock run over consideration and making sure it was done right. But Congressman, it's always good to talk to you. We're way over.
Yeah,
and that's my fault. I apologize.
There we go. No problem, Lou. Talk to you soon.
Good to see you, Congressman. Up next, Democrats blocking Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch for another week. Guess what? There are some folks who support the president and work for the man directly who think that's just fine. Let's get a new partner. Ed Rollins, Michael Goodwin tell us what they think. Here next. I've got to hurry and get to Rollins and Goodwin here. Our online poll, we asked, do you believe the Democrats will be begging President Trump to pass health care legislation to fix Obamacare when it fails? And only 62% of you said that they will, but that's a pretty good majority, actually. Democrats forcing a one-week delay in the Senate Judiciary Committee vote on Supreme Court nominee Neil Gorsuch. The committee vote will now be held next Monday. At least 19 Democrats have publicly said they will oppose Gorsuch because he's a man of such character, talent, and integrity. Who would want that on our Supreme Court? Republicans need at least 8 Democrats to move the nomination forward as it stands now. Joining us, veteran of 10 presidential campaigns, Republican strategist Ed Rollins, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Post, and a few campaigns himself, Michael Goodwin. Good to have you.
Nice to be with you.
Let's start with this week delay for a man that everybody knows should be on the Supreme Court.
Well, you also understand that in that week that they're supposed to take him up is they all go on recess. They're out for 2 weeks. They have one more week here and then part of the second week. So they could delay this thing a month.
The Congress and the Senate have got a racket. Here's President Trump. I mean, here he's a whirling dervish. He is working 24/7. He's going all the time. And there is, well, Speaker Ryan, Mitch McConnell, and they sort of saunter in 1 week out of every month and do something. They say they're doing something. At least the Senate's holding confirmation hearings this time.
They have spring break every month.
It's incredible. It is absolutely incredible.
You would think that the sense of urgency that the country expressed in the election would carry over and that this would be a very productive Congress.
My God, you would think, looking at all the issues and challenges and threats we've got, somebody in the Congress and the Senate would say, hey, we need to convene here until we solve some damn problems.
Well, we've gone through this period of where extreme partisanship means nothing gets done. And we now have a majority in the House and the Senate, meaning Republicans, and the president. So we have to figure out how to get it done. Obviously, they stumbled badly on the health care. Someone can't count votes. And
what do you mean they stumbled?
They stumbled badly.
Speaker Ryan said for weeks he was going to pass it, had the votes, and then guess what? He didn't.
He didn't.
What the heck is going on with Ryan?
I hold Priebus, just as you said in your thing. He's the person who's big pal with Ryan. He had to sit down with Ryan and say, do you really have the votes? I mean, I've had those meetings when I was in the White House. Do you really have the votes? You don't take a maybe. A maybe is a no vote. You count the yes votes, and they didn't have them. They didn't have them for weeks and weeks. They took this president, they put him out on the line, and basically, I think.
And then had the audacity to blame the Freedom Caucus.
Right.
I mean, blame the Freedom Caucus? What was it, 15 votes?
15 out of the 30, 35 members basically said no. The others basically had either come around.
I mean,
there's more moderates that basically were going to vote against it than there were the Freedom Caucus.
So why isn't the White House screaming about moderates?
Well, I think Ed makes a really important point there about that. It looks as though they were never close, and we don't know because there wasn't a vote, but it looks as though they weren't even close to the 218. So I'm not sure what Ryan was counting. Was he going on a wing and a prayer here? He thought they would just roll people over at the last minute.
Well, let me ask you this. At some point, he's either this incompetent or he is this, shall we say, divided in his loyalties. I mean, is it Charles Koch? Is it the Business Roundtable, the Chamber? Who's he working for here? Well, because they didn't want this bill to pass.
Remember, they created, he and Secretary Price, who was the budget chairman under him, they created this bill. This was their bill. And
this is the insurance company's bill, in my opinion.
Well, whatever. They were the ones who drafted it. The reality is an overwhelming majority of voters in this country want Obamacare repealed. An overwhelming majority of Democrats and Republicans want this bill repealed. It was a bad bill, and it should have been a good bill, and it would have been done.
17% support, and we just heard Congressman Collins say, well, they did a bad job of educating the public. Hello? Look, who the hell educates Congress?
Right.
Look, who the hell educates the staff around the president? I mean, they're floating more bull than I can even imagine.
Well, look, and I think that whoever advised the president to go out and support this so early and to throw all his weight behind it, I think that was bad advice, too, because it clearly didn't, in the end, it just took him down with the ship. I think the president's been damaged by this, and I don't think it gets any easier from here as a result.
The tax will be tough. I promise you, all the bravado on the tax bill. I went through 2 tax bills when I was in the White House with Reagan. It's a very tough sell.
Yeah, and you're going to use the same leadership in the House to drive that legislation?
Right.
I mean, you talk about some constituencies. It's going to be open. It's going to be transparent. Yeah, right.
And it's not as though that all the votes that they had for Obamacare repeal, which they dropped to come into this, for taxes, they still don't have a bill that going to get majority support.
Got to go. Good to see you. Ed, thanks.
Thank you.
That's it for us tonight. Thanks for being with us. Congressman Dave Brat among our guests tomorrow night. Please be with us. Thanks for being with us tonight. Good night from New York.